We were talking about the summit yesterday and the day before, and real quickly I'll sort of run through the I'll run through them real quick, and I'm sure we'll be bringing these up, especially I want to brag on it when we get the Mike McBath back on the air. And by the way, tomorrow is the Pizza Eating Challenge. We'll be talking about that in a little while too. That's right, the eve of the challenge. The pressers the next day, as I said, they started out with Rick Santorum, then it was Bobby Jindal, then it was Rand Paul, and then ended up with John Casey. And I asked them all the same question that I asked Ben Carson the night before. As soon as our show was over, I ran around to catch, I was hoping to catch at least part of the Ben Carson press conference, ended up catching it all, and I actually had to wait about 15 minutes, which was fine with me. But the rest of the people have been in there a while. But Carl was in there. We were in there in force. Let's just put it that way. Carl and Mickey Alvarez were in there, as was I was in there with my brother. They were sitting together as a pair. I was sitting there with my brother as a pair, and then across the aisle was the three amigoettes, the three senoritas, I should say, the three senoritas, right? We had Cindy Grace, Rachel Cohen, and Kathy Santovecino side by side. Oh my! You all know about trouble, baby. T-R-O-U-B-L-E with capital letters. But anyway, all of us. I was so proud when I was driving home Friday night because we all got in a question to Dr. Carson. And it was strange because with all of the other candidates, there was a bit more clamor amongst the journalists to get a question in. With Dr. Carson, it was kind of subdued, almost like they were, I don't want to say afraid, but reluctant in some fashion to ask him a question.
And we're waiting for you.
Well, maybe that's what it was. And so about the third one in, and I figure out one of the tricks is try to get centrally located up close, so they're kind of looking right at you no matter what, and make eye contact as much as you can, and don't sit there with an angry look on your face, I guess. But anyway, he points to me, and I asked the same version of the question that I asked the next day, which was. And this was, of course, in lieu of most of the questions he had gotten up to this point. Well, all of them had been about France because it was a developing story. And I asked him, I said, Donald Trump has said that he would take the 200,000 or so refugees and migrants that this administration is going to let in from that region and send them back. Would you? And he began to answer, which is what they all said, a various version of this. I would not allow them in the first place, and he began to elaborate on that. And I said, well, what about the ones this administration is going to let in? And he said, well, let me finish my answer. You know how he talks, yeah. Right? Very patient with me, if you will. And he went on to say, well, I think Congress should stand up to this president and not allow it. And then I kind of interrupted again, and I said, this Congress? Like, this Congress is going to stand up to this president? And he said, well, we need to make sure that this Congress stands up to this president, was ultimately his answer. And lo and behold, today, it has turned into one of the bigger issues surrounding this attack.
Yeah, it's actually become quite big. It's full of.
And as a matter of fact, it turns out, as I said, I asked various variations of the question the next day. And when I asked it to Rand Paul, I said, given your stance on domestic surveillance, do you think that we're doing enough to surveil these people who are already here? And Donald Trump has said he would kick the 200,000 out if this administration is going to let in. Would you? And the first thing he said was, no, I do not think we're doing enough to, track these people. And then he went on to give his answer, which was, once again, pretty much a variation of what they all said. I wouldn't let them in the first place. How do we know who they are? There's no way to check them, none of this. And then they all, at the end of the day, though, never said that they would send any that Obama lets in out.
Of course.
That answer ended up on Fox last night. Kathy, as I was beginning to say a while ago, calls me up at 11:30 to tell me that she had just seen his answer on Fox, not local Fox. Big deal, Fox. And, you know, it wasn't important that they showed the question or heard, you know, but the important part was that I elicited that answer. And when I got to John Kasich, he was the last one now, right? So my variation of the question to him was this. The other night, this past week in Iowa, Donald Trump said, quote unquote, I'm going to bomb the shucks out of ISIS, but I didn't say shucks. I said didn't I say the word, Lucas? Did I say the word? I said the word. And then I said also, and he's also said he would send the 200,000 out, you know, would you? And it was a serious question. There was no, I wasn't trying to be funny or anything. As a matter of fact, I was kind of giving him an opening because he has been the one who's been most vociferous against Trump, right? So I laid it out there. And he pretty much said the same thing, but he also said something that I thought actually was, and all of the other candidates were asked by one of the other reporters, what would you be doing right now if you were president? And to be honest with you, I thought he gave one of the best answers. He said he would urge France to call for the enforcement of Article 5 of the NATO treaty. And Article 5 is common, what do they call it? It basically is an attack against one NATO country is an attack against all NATO countries. They have, the clause has actually got a title to it, common defense or something like that, I think it is called. And in that sense, it would be a declaration in essence of war against the Islamic State and call for all of the NATO countries. It would be a ready-made coalition. And it would call for all of the NATO countries to step up to the fight, step up to the plate. And so if you were looking for a response that was probably the most, I thought, if you would talk about it in the sense of recognizing what we're going to have to do. Now, we never got to interview Lindsey Graham, and he was gone before the event happened. But in giving the stump speeches, I tell you what, that guy understands the threat. He was talking about stuff like this going to happen, and lo and behold, that very same night, it happened. Now the problem with Lindsey Graham is his delivery style it doesn't match the threat. Now I suppose he's trying to sound overly calm so as not to try to sound or not to be seen as sounding hyperbolic or out, you know, lunatic or something like that. He's trying to, you know, he's delivering it in such a low-key approach. But when you're delivering it at a whisper, I mean, it just kind of doesn't fit the severity of the threat. Right. And so he's not being heard. And that's another thing when you speak in a whisper. It's hard for people to hear you. And lo and behold, when he spoke the other day, it was lunchtime, I grant you that, but when those stomachs called, it was loud. It sounded louder than Lindsey Graham's warnings and
right. And they all left.
Exactly.
Well, France has retaliated.
And what have they done?
They have dropped 20 bombs on an ISIS training.
You mean they didn't fly planes over with 20 bombs and come back with 15 or 16? They actually delivered them.
They delivered them. They did what they said they were going to do. 10 fighter jets pummeled ISIS-held city of Raqqa in Syria with at least 20 bombs, according to the French Defense Ministry. They, let's see, what was they hit? The jets hit command and control center, Jihadi recruitment center, munitions depot, and a training camp.
Huh. I guess they didn't have too much trouble figuring out where those places were, huh?
Oh, they didn't ask our president.
Yeah, because he sort of seems to be lost over there. He sends the planes out and they come back because they say that there's no targets that they can find.
Right. Meanwhile, you've got these convoys of tanks in plain sight, but they couldn't find them.
And command control with the drone technology we have, you couple that with satellite technology, there ain't nothing in that country that hasn't been pinpointed down to a trash basket on the corner of Central and Main and downtown Damascus.
Exactly. I mean, they can tell you what kind of pen you got in your pocket.
You got it. And there's no way you can't tell me that we don't have the intelligence to know where to hit these people and hit them hard, and that's what France is showing us. And that's what the president should be doing tonight too. We should be following suit, hammering. Dude, what was it again that Donald Trump said? Bombing the shucks out of them?
Bottom, yeah, the SH-1T.
Yes, the SH-1T, right on out of them, baby. You know it. And that's what we've got to ramp it up to do. And another thing, Trump, by the way, I was going to mention this later in the show, may as well talk about it now. Another thing that Trump said that he would do would be to take away their source of revenue, which is, it ain't charitable donations, it's
the oil.
Oil, exactly.
Yeah, he said he was going to bomb the oil fields and obliterate them, and then bring on ExxonMobil into there, rebuild it, put a wall around it, and keep it for ourselves.
Listen, a lot of people say, oh, how are you going to do that? These things are dilapidated anyway. They're basically ancient technology, and it would be a great way to upgrade them, right? And you would take the source of revenue. Well, lo and behold, article appears in the paper this past week. Pentagon announces that they're going to up their airstrikes around the oil fields and try to disrupt the flow of illegal oil from the oil wells to the black market because it is funding the Islamic State fighters. Imagine that. Donald Trump is not qualified to be president, but already in a couple of instances we see here where his suggestions are now being done in the theater of action.
But you know, if we bomb the SH-1T out of the oil fields, our illustrious Muslim-loving president will send them financial aid.
Well,
because that's who he is. He has a heart of compassion towards terrorists.
In a way, right now, he's already doing that.
I mean, he's moving to increase and accelerate the admission of Syrian refugees into the United States. He doesn't give a crap whether there's ISIS terrorists there or not.
And he's doing that because he understands that if he doesn't get them in and get them in quick, they ain't going to get in here.
And he wants to have terrorists here to create havoc after he has left office.
Imagine that. Imagine that. What a guy, huh?
See, I defend